All right, hi guys. So the last thing we're going to talk about this week is ISO. ISO is basically describes how sensitive your film, or in this case, the image sensor, is to light. Back in the old days when we used film, we actually had to pick our ISO at the beginning, use that film all the way up before we could change film to change ISO. But with digital cameras, it's super simple. I'm going to show you how to change ISO on our power shots, and then we're going to practice taking a couple of shots just to see what the difference is. So turn on my camera. I've got it set to shutter priority, TV shutter speed priority. And at the bottom corner, you'll see it says my ISO. ISO 100 is good for situations where you're outside, it's really bright outside. There's very little noise or grain in images that use ISO 100. The problem is it's not as sensitive to light as some of the other settings. So let's just, on my table, I've got some colored pencils. Let's take a picture. Okay, so I know it's kind of hard to see, but with that ISO, it's pretty dark. I think the the video camera is actually making up for how dark it is. It's actually darker than it looks on the screen. But let's just compare that image to a higher ISO. So to change the ISO, you don't go up here like you would to change to shutter speed or aperture. Instead, what you're going to do is go to this ISO button, click it, and the little menu will pop up, and you'll just scroll to the appropriate ISO. ISO 3200 is as sensitive as it gets for this camera. So you would only really use ISO 3200 if you needed a lot of light in your picture. You're probably shooting either at dusk or inside. So let's just take a picture there and see how they compare. So here we got ISO 3200 versus ISO 100. So if you're looking at this in person, the difference is even more stark. So you have a lot more light available to you at ISO 3200. Another option for this is to, I don't know why this keeps turning off, is to actually just have it be on auto. Let's say you have shutter speed priority. You don't want to think about ISO. You just want it to pick the best choice for the situation. You can scroll all the way down to auto, select auto, and then that way you don't even have to think about ISO. You can think about other things like shutter speed or aperture. And if here, of course, you've got your shutter speed set. Let's see, if we change this to 250, and we'll do ISO, let's do 800 versus 3200. Interesting. So your job is to just play around with different ISOs. Remember that the higher the ISO number, the grainier it gets, but the more light that you get. So it's kind of a trade-off. You don't want your images to be grainy unless you're doing something like an artistic shoot. But for yearbook, usually you want to shy away from graininess and noise if you can. So the best choice is just to use the lowest number ISO possible, even though sometimes that might mean that you're still at 3200. All right, good luck, happy shooting.